I'm Sam. Today I'm here to talk to you about Responder. Again, I guess I'm Sam. I'm a penetration tester at Quantum Security. I've worked there for the last 6 years or so. I'm currently the head of technology and research, which is just a fancy way of saying I run the pen test team. I work for Quantum Security technically, which is a part of the Bastion group, which you can see there's a whole group of companies over here. There's also a list of things here that I'm interested in. So if you want to come and have a chat afterwards at the pub, here's some prompts to get you going. To set the tone for this talk, none of the techniques I'm going to talk about are strictly new, but the way that they're used might be different to what you're used to. These have come about from times that we've had to adapt the usual tricks when they haven't been working during an engagement. They may seem familiar to you and to things that you've used or seen in the past, and if they do, then that's really awesome. Because a key part of what I want to push in this talk is that you shouldn't limit yourself to just the things that you've known or used previously. A big part of how we evolve as an industry is reapplying existing things in new and exciting ways. A brief overview of what I'll be talking about is Responder and how it works. Stealing credentials from printers, using files to steal passwords, attacking applications, and then finally, just for kind of completeness, we'll talk about a cool tool called Coercer that's become a bit of a go-to in network pen testing. So if you've done any sort of network pen testing before, you're probably familiar with Responder as a network pen testing tool. It has the envious position of being a tool that you'll often run before Nmap. There's not many things that you can say that about. The reason that you do that is you can kick it off, and with little to no interaction, you'll start collecting free password hashes. It works by abusing some legacy protocols like LLMNR, NetBIOS, and multicast DNS. These protocols are used as sort of a bit of a fallback when DNS didn't work. So how does that work? When a request from a host, so when a host is looking for another host on the network, what you'll normally do is you'll send out a DNS request that says, where is the file server? And the DNS server will respond saying, I don't know, I've never seen that before. What happens then is your computer will ping out to everyone and say, does anyone know where the file server is? What Responder does is it pretends to be anything that the user asks for by just responding with a response that says, yep, that's me, authenticate please. And obviously, because the fastest response is the best, people will just start sending you their hashes. Sort of a bit at the bottom there to add is that this is enabled by default, so unless you explicitly turn this off in your system, you're probably still vulnerable to this. And then you'll get a hash that looks like this show up in your Responder instance, which is great because we can take those offline and crack them and get the user's clear text password and then own everything. It also supports a bunch of other protocols outside of SMB, like FTP and SQL and HTTP, but we're not really going to talk about those today. For any of you that are visual learners, it works kind of like this. Our victim sends out all of those requests to say, who is the file share? And we just respond saying, that's us. And then they send us spreads. So that was kind of a quick, dirty overview of how Responder works. So hopefully you're all experts in that now. Here's something else you might be familiar with, printers. I'm sure you've all seen them before. Printers can do lots of cool things like print stuff. They can also do other cool things too. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on today, is those other cool things that printers can do. So one time we were on this network pen test, and we're having a bit of difficulty. We'd got onto the network, and we started scanning around, and we weren't really getting much. This client was a pretty heavy user of like SaaS and cloud services, so there was basically nothing on the internal network. The only things that were there were a printer and a file share. And the thing that we knew was that the file share has all the good stuff, because the file share has all the things that were too sensitive for them to put in the cloud or store anywhere else. So after banging around for a bit, we weren't really finding anything. But what we did find was that one of the low privilege users on the printer was still using the default creds. So they'd gone through and they'd hardened it a little bit, and they'd changed the password on the admin user, but the printer also had a low privilege user that we had the creds for. One of the things that we found was that this low privilege user had access to the address book. This isn't uncommon. Quite frequently, you'll find printers that have default creds, or even the address book publicly open. What was different in this case was that we found that the printer had been set up with credentials to scan documents. So you could scan something and it would send it to the file share for you. We tried to get this password through elite hacker tools like ViewSource, and we didn't get anywhere with that. So it was back to the drawing board. One of the things that we could do as the low privilege user, however, was change the address of the file share. So what we did is spin up a responder and change that address. You can see here that it was able to use FTP or SMB. We left it on FTP. The reason for that sort of becomes a bit apparent during the next slide. After hitting apply, we get the creds in clear text. So this is even better than getting SMB auth, because now we can just straight up use those creds, log into the file share, and get all the goodies. Yeah, because why wouldn't your scanner also be the admin on your file share? This is a different engagement to talk about now. Phishing and planting files. We were given a very specific phishing target. We were given a list of 4 users who'd had extensive extra phishing training, and we got given kind of the go-ahead to just do anything that we could do to try and phish these users, because they'd had all the training, so they knew what they were doing. That meant that the normal things were kind of out. Like, we couldn't just send them an email that says like, hey, it's IT, please send us your password. So we had to be a bit more creative. We got creative by taking some existing Office products that include the ability to remotely include files. This is a bit of an old vulnerability, but pretty much all Office products like Word, PowerPoint, Excel will allow you to include files from a remote location that will load when your Office product is open. There's lots of genuine business use cases for this. Like, if you've got 1,000 templates and you want to change your logo on all of those, that's going to be super painful for someone to go through and change them all manually. So instead, you just make it call out to the file share to say, load whatever logo file is here. That's super useful for us, because when you call out to the file share, you're going to authenticate to the file share and give up your hash. So we kind of go through that process. How are we going to deliver this Word document? Well, users are generally pretty trusting. These users in particular are not going to be pretty trusting, so we're going to have to get creative again. But people are used to receiving documents. Like, if you think back, most days you probably receive a document that has an email that will have like a docx attachment that has someone's CV or like a form for you to fill out. So you're pretty used to that kind of thing. So we get to work. We start creating some bait. The contents of the file didn't really matter, because by the time they get to this point of actually seeing what's in the file, it's going to be too late anyway. But what we want to do is just make it kind of believable so they don't know that they've been owned straight away. That way we can kind of save the victims a bit of anxiety. What we do is we start by creating a linked out image, which you get to pick your image. What we want to do is reference out to where we want to load this image from. In this case, it doesn't really matter. Like, we don't care where we're putting this in. We just have to make it so that Word works to create us the right file. And that gives us this ugly little box at the bottom. And that's not going to look great, because someone's going to open this and be like, what's that ugly little box? So we chuck it down in the footer and make it 0 pixels by 0 pixels. That way, when someone goes to do their forensics later, they're not going to have a look at this, and we're just going to sort of walk away scot-free. Perfect. So we've got this very believable looking document that someone's going to be happy with. The only thing that we need to do now is stop sending our hashes to the GCSB. We open up the Word document, because Word documents are just zipped files. So you can use something like 7-zip to open the archive and have a look around. Normally, it'd be in that document XML that's there, but because we shifted it to the footer, because we're pretty shifty, we have to open that one instead. And all we do is change our target at the bottom there. You can see here, instead of calling out over HTTP to the GCSB website, instead we put in the address of our responder instance and have the sort of the slashes at the start, and it'll try and load it over SMB instead of HTTP. Cool. And now we collect hashes. Unfortunately, this trick is no longer the guaranteed kill that it used to be. So when we did this several years ago, as soon as you open the Word document, you'd get hashes. It doesn't quite work that way anymore because Microsoft have sort of cottoned on to that, and the secure protected mode of opening documents will stop loading remote images when you open it. There's still lots of ways around that, though. You just need to encourage someone to open the document. A really good way is if you can tell them that they need to fill out a form, they'll have to type stuff in, so they'll have to exit protected mode to do that. One thing you'll want to be careful, though, is this trick can be too useful. For example, if you send someone free tickets and they open it and you collect hashes and you're like, great, okay, cool, I've got the user I want. And then they forward their tickets on to their friend who works somewhere else, and you start collecting hashes from places you're not supposed to be collecting hashes from, that's a problem. So where do we put these files? Like I was saying before, we were trying to do phishing for this originally, so emailing them out to a victim worked pretty well. You can also put them in lots of other places. You can drop them on network file shares. You can replace existing documents in SharePoint. This one works pretty well if you can find things that people are actively editing. You just take a copy of it, add your malicious insertion, and put it back up there. Cool. Now on to kind of a third topic. That was a bit of a rough segue. This one got a lot more publicity than the previous one, which has sort of been around for a while, but most people don't really talk about. Cast your mind back to during COVID times. You'll probably remember using Zoom. Everyone was using Zoom because we still had to talk to each other until this critical vulnerability came out. And it was the end. It was the end of Zoom, and it was terrible. If someone pasted a link into the chat, it would turn it into a hyperlink. And that's terrible. That's really bad. But what someone could also do was paste in a UNC file path, and it would try and, when you click on that, your computer will try and open that file. So your computer will open Explorer and try and open that file that we're calling out to over SMB. So sort of like we've learned from the previous two issues, people will send us their hashes when they try and load those files over SMB. You might be thinking, no worries, I'm in a secure Zoom room. I trust my friends not to do this. You'll probably also remember Zoom bombing being super popular at the time as well. Brute forcing Zoom room links, because what else do you have to do other than in lockdown, other than brute forcing Bitcoin wallets as well? So yeah, having random people join your meeting wasn't particularly unheard of at the time. While this vulnerability didn't really turn out to be the sort of world-ending critical that it was touted as, it's a good reminder that we should be looking for UNC file path inclusion in places that we might not expect it to be. Because there are other really cool cases, like this one that came up earlier this year, where it is truly critical. There was a zero-click vulnerability in Outlook for CVE 2023-23397, which I'm sure everyone will remember to go and read about later on. It affected the Outlook thick client every time that it went beep beep. As someone who spends most of my day managing people, I really love meetings because I go to heaps of meetings. And I'm sure all of you love going to meetings as well. Something that you're probably familiar with is 15 minutes before your meeting, you'll get a little pop-up on your computer that says, you've got a meeting in 15 minutes. And if you've got your sound turned on, it'll make that lovely beep beep noise. Because you're trying to be efficient, you can change those from 15 minutes down to something like 5 minutes, or just notify me at the time. You can also change the sound file because maybe you're unique and you want your sweet synth beats instead of beep beep. What you might not be familiar with is that some of those settings that you change when you send that meeting out to other people allow you to override their local settings for what sound is played or when it's played. If you open up the message that you send out to someone, you'll find that it has just below the highlighted line there, a reminder override, so we can override whatever the local settings are. And if you look at the highlighted line, we can change where it tries to load that sound from. You're probably familiar enough with this now to sort of know where this one is going. But yeah, it got worse because the way that this vulnerability works is that you send out that meeting invite to someone and it pops instantly. As soon as they receive the message, their calendar inside Outlook will try and load that sound and store it locally so that when it comes around to have the meeting, it's already got the sound. So you never even have to open that email. You just have to receive it and that's it, you're done. So you can kind of see the explanation that Microsoft put out here is that, yeah, you don't even have to hit the preview pane. You just have to receive the email and it's game over. So the lesson from this one is that basically anything that interacts with UNC file paths can be exploited in this way. So we want to keep our eye out for things like that, which can make great candidates for stealing hashes. And finally, I want to talk about coercer. So coercer has become a bit of a standard part of the network pen testing toolkit. It supports responder by acting as a bit of a multi-tool to exploit a number of other vulnerabilities. This video is going to work. Cool. So at the top there, you can see that we're going to run coercer, and at the bottom, it's got a responder instance running. All you do is chuck in run coercer against this host, and it'll try a bunch of stuff and start giving you hashes. The way that it does that is it uses SMB pipes to exploit Microsoft RPCs or remote procedure calls to try and get the victim host to communicate back to your responder instance. It integrates a bunch of techniques that all work in similar ways, that you might be familiar with, like petit potam, shadow coerce, and DFS coerce, into one tool so that you can just do them all at once instead of having to run 15 different tools. Cool. You might be wondering now, how do I fix this? I've seen all of these horrible things, and now I don't want my users to have this problem. That's super easy. You can fix it by just turning off this one GPO, and that's it. You're done. You can now rest easy. Cool. The summary for this talk is kind of like, there's lots of interesting ways that we can encourage people to send us hashes or passwords when you're just not getting them for free in a responder. It's happening more and more that you plug into a network and you just receive nothing on a responder. So we need to use ways to start encouraging people to talk to us. Cool. Yeah, if there's anything that you've liked about this talk or anything from that list earlier, yeah, come and have a chat with me at the pub later. Cool. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Busted!